Hi, everybody. My name is Fedor, and today I'm going to talk to you about the North Star framework. The North Star framework is something that we as Amplitude have distilled from working with hundreds of customers that want to do product analytics, experiment within their product, do recommendations in the product. And I'm privileged to share that framework, that story with you today. I'm also going to add some personal experience to it. I have been working with Amplitude for around a year now. I've worked with around 40 customers in EMEA, occasionally also working with North America customers. And I'm going to share some examples of what leading product-led companies do. A little bit about myself. My background is in management consulting and in data. So throughout my 8 years of my career, I've always been in data space, working as a data analyst, data lead, product manager as well. And this last year, I've been privileged to be part of Amplitude, where apart from client interaction and data, I also have a great product behind me. Let's get started. So the North Star framework is a little bit of an abstract topic, but my goal today is to introduce it to you in such a way that you understand what it is, you get some relevant examples, and you have some practical things that you learn at the end of the session that you can go and apply to your company if you're interested in the framework. A little bit of the background. There are a lot of product managers here. We're all in the digital product business. At Amplitude, we have estimated that in the last 40 years, there have been 500 products built across the globe. And actually, in these 4 years that we are in now, there's going to be another 400 million products built. So there is an increased competition. There is more and more consumer choice. Basically, when you're building an app or a product, you only have one chance to impress the customers, or two maximum, until the customer switches to another product. Our customers of Amplitude realize that growing complexity is there. They come to us and they want to have one question answered. How do their digital products drive their business? And this is where the Amplitude steps in. Just before I move on, how many of you have had experience with Amplitude so far? Just to understand a bit the audience. Like 20%? Good. And experience with product analytics? Right, around half of the group. Historically, analytics industry has been more about the left side. And apologies, you don't see the funnel here, but it's about acquiring users. So a lot of focus was there on marketing, on things like what is the amount of page views, what's the bounce rate, what are the click-through rates. So those are the things that have been there for a while. And there are also BI tools. They've been increasingly popular that can help you answer questions like, hey, what's happening with my transactions? Or maybe how do I analyze the ERP data? And at Amplitude, we are big believers that whatever happens after you convert the users, it is a big deal. So whenever the customer goes in, the customer needs to get activated. You want your product to do a certain actions for that user so that the user gets a value out of the product. Then the customers keep engaging with the product. They like it, they get the value. Over time, they also retain, and the retained customers are extremely valuable for any kind of business. I get to work with customers with companies that have a retention of 80%, but also there are customers of mine out there that have a retention of 3%. And understanding that behavior in the product and what drives it is really a fundamental thing if you want to have good product and have good product analytics. Those customers that retain, they hopefully get delighted by using your product, and they also spread the word. They refer new customers, and that's how the growth loop works. We as Amplitude today have a product that allows you investigate in detail how are the users behaving within the product. And our customers, they love our self-service functionalities to ask questions, get the insights, measure stuff, the metrics that are important for them, and then act based upon those metrics and incorporate the learnings into the product. This is what is happening for every customer, and pretty much all the companies we work with. They have very motivated teams. They have great focused ambition. They want to learn about the users, and they want to embed the learnings in the product. But here is a very typical thing that happens, that we see happening. There are some customers who come back to us in a while and they say, well, it's great. We use Amplitude. We have 6 high-performing teams that work with your product, but they are all optimizing on their own metric. What can be an overarching metric or an overarching strategy that we should focus on? How do we go about it? And this is where the North Star comes into play, and we as Amplitude help facilitating those workshops with the customer. And very often you hear there things about the shared model, or there can be other words about the shared hypothesis, accessible strategy. How do you make the strategy accessible? Connective tissue between different metrics, different product teams in the organization. This is something that fewer companies have, and those who have it, we see that they achieve bigger outcomes. This is where we believe the North Star can help. So every product out there, or almost every product, has a vision and wants to achieve certain impact with that vision. And a vision translates into a set of beliefs, where we say, based on that set of beliefs and maybe a bit of data, we are going to make certain impact in the world. And North Star is not rocket science. It's just a way to communicate to your organization what are the things, what are the key metrics, what's that value formula, the connecting tissues that you find important in order to translate your product vision into the impact. Let me give you some examples, and they are split into 3 depending on which game of engagement your product is playing. So we at Amplitude believe that there are 3 games of engagement. The first one is the attention game. The attention game, you can think about it as the game that all social media companies play. They want you to be there. They want you to be in the product, watch videos, scroll through the apps. This is how they make money. This is how they ensure that their product is successful. A potential North Star there can be how many users are there that added X friends in the first Y days. So maybe you've heard this already before. That's a famous story from Facebook, where they have figured out that if a user comes to Facebook, adds 7 friends within 10 days, then it's a good user and it's going to stay with Facebook forever, because the user gets the key value out of Facebook by putting all the social circle of that person in there. That's a good potential North Star. Another one can be how many subscribers are there that stream more than 60 hours of video per month. That is also a potential North Star, because it probably indicates that those users that are there, they are going to stay longer, they're going to retain better, they're going to purchase more within the app itself. Some other North Stars can be less about the user and more about the general number. You can think about things like daily watch time. It is a very absolute number, but what if you say, at the moment we have 500,000 hours streamed and we want the watch time to 1 billion. So that can be a sort of an ambitious goal that aligns the whole organization. Another game of engagement is facilitating transactions. And here you can think about companies like all marketplaces, ride-hailing companies. So if you think about ride-hailing business, you can have a North Star for your business that will sound like how many users we have had in the last months that had at least 2 pleasant rides. And maybe even if you don't know that metric yet, you can say, okay, how many users we have that have pleasant rides? So that makes sense, because we want the rides to happen. And the word pleasant here is very important. It kind of adds some flavor to the North Star, because a pleasant ride automatically means so many different things and so many different product teams behind. There should be a great app, the driver should come on time, the driver should have a good rating, you should have a pleasant ride, etc., etc. So that kind of helps to align the whole organization around it. Number of purchases per premium subscriber. also a common one for marketplaces. I'm sure most of you use Amazon or Bol.com and all these kind of marketplaces. And whenever you make a purchase, there is a big call to action that, hey, become a premium subscriber, because they know that if you become a premium subscriber, you'll be there for a longer time and you will make more transactions. And the third one, which is one of my favorite, because Amplitude also plays in that game, is the productivity game. Unlike transactions and attention, productivity products, they don't need your attention. At Amplitude, we don't want people to build charts for like 3 hours. That doesn't make any sense. We also don't want any transactions because there are no transactions in there. This is common for B2B companies. If you think about messengers, they don't necessarily want just certain amount of organizations. They want certain amount of organizations that send that get their product, that maybe if they send 2,000 messages, that automatically correlates with the fact that they also send video files and audio files and GIFs, and they kind of get the idea of the product and stay longer. Before we get into like what is a good North Star, I want to emphasize like what is a bad North Star. And that's an example coming from one of our workshops that I recently had with a customer, with that B2B marketing customer. We do this exercise about the magic chart. Every company has a magic chart, and very often you see those numbers on the website, like, hey, we have 10 million users. We don't say that out of that 10 million users, only like 100,000 are really the relevant ones we care about, but it's just a vanity metric. So people feel vanity metrics really well, and this is what they put in as examples of vanity metrics. Very common things are page views. Yeah, you can have as many page views as you want, but if it doesn't help users get the value out of the product, it doesn't help. A very common one, and I also see it in my daily work with the customers, where people say, we want to track daily active users and monthly active users, because if you divide one by the other, you kind of know the engagement really well. That is a good starting point. However, it does not always lead you to the right answers that you're searching for. Because just being an engaged user, coming back daily to a marketplace product, doesn't mean anything. I can go to a marketplace every day, search for something, but never buy. Okay, I'm an engaged user, but does it help? Probably not. And the last one here I want to highlight is revenue. Sales numbers, ARR. These are valid metrics, especially for bigger companies, especially for public companies, because revenue is what is always looked at by the analysts. And it's out there, revenue and the earnings per share. But revenue is a lagging indicator. In other words, we can have great marketing, we can bring a lot of people to Amplitude and sell a lot, and the revenue will come. However, if the product is not working, nothing is going to happen afterwards. It will just fade away. So what are the components of a good North Star? We see 3 things. The first one is measure of customer value, the obvious one. So you want to measure how many customers you have that really get the value out of the product, and that if they're ready to pay for it, even better. The second one is maybe more obvious, but it answers the question, how often should you switch your North Star metric? Your North Star metric should be aligned with the product strategy. And as long as the product strategy stays the same, the North Star metric can stay the same as well. If the product is completely pivoting from one industry to the other, reusing what they have, then the North Star will be different. But if it's a booking platform that will have bookings for the next years, probably the North Star can be around bookings, not around something else. Leading indicator of revenue, we spoke a little bit about it as well. Is there something in the product that can indicate that this is a good customer, this we want to have more of, and they will bring us revenue? So these are the components, and I want to spend a few minutes talking about how Amplitude does it for ourselves, because we have to practice what we preach, and this is what we do. We start with just understanding that we play a productivity game. And these are 3 very simple beliefs about our product, very simplified. We get value by having customers who ask questions about the data, get answers, and share their learnings. This is what we want to do. If we do it well, then it brings us value and brings the customer value as well. We believe in democratizing the data in the companies. Actually, we would never say that it's just a data analyst or a product analyst that should go on Amplitude. Everyone should go on Amplitude and access the data if they're looking for that data question, for the data answer. It can be an executive, it can be a data analyst, a product manager, and whoever else. You don't have to know all the details about how the data is structured underneath, but you should be able to see what's the retention for your key cohort of users. And the third one is the belief that if the adoption increases within the company, then it means that we bring more value to the company and they'll be a better customer. So what is our North Star? At the moment, our North Star is weekly learning users. And we can drop the word weekly here. A learning user is the one that creates a chart and shares it with at least 2 people, and those 2 people view the chart. If that happens, then it's a learning user. And I find this really fascinating because I've worked with so many different companies throughout my consulting career, and I do work with a lot of companies now. And having a metric like this brings a lot of clarity to the organization. When I joined, we were around 500 people. And whoever you would call in the organization, no matter if they are in San Francisco, in Japan, or in Georgia, you feel that those people know why they come to work and how their work contributes to the rest of the organization. So this is one element that greatly contributes to it, just having that North Star. Interestingly enough, it was not always like this. Before learning users, we had querying users. The strategy was slightly different. We were focusing mainly on the asking questions and getting the answers part. And that North Star worked for a while. We provided that productivity. And we had those cases where if the amount of weekly querying users grows, we believe that it's great. Until the moment when we started realizing that there are companies that have querying users, but still churn at the end of the year. And why that happens is you have maybe 5 analysts really savvy working with the data, doing a lot of queries. You look at it and you believe that everything is working fine. But then at the end of the year, maybe 2 of them resign and the company says, well, we actually never adopted Amplitude. We just had a couple of folks who were using it on the background. And that was the moment when Amplitude realized that the collaboration part is important and that learning aspect was incorporated in the North Star. And that was at the same time when the product strategy shifted to build more for collaboration. Okay, maybe that resonated with some of you and you want to think about a North Star for your company. How can you do one? The simplest answer is that you can just have a workshop where you surface all the beliefs around the company, around your product, what brings value, what's your product promise. And this is just one of the examples that my colleague John Cutler led as a webinar. Imagine, if you look on the left side, imagine that you are working for a company called DIY company, and your product is a DIY kit. So who are the people involved? You're building this DIY kit with maybe those nice pots of flowers for those who love doing stuff with their hands, maybe for families, for people who want to do something else than just digital work. What is the product promise? You want your product to be interesting enough for the people who love this kind of stuff. You want that they complete those projects. You want to get them away from the screen time to do the kit itself. And if you have a kind of discussion within the company, you can also say, okay, what do we already have? What do we believe is a path to get there? And people will say something like, we need to have a good search, because search will allow us to match the products we have to the users and their interests. That can be one aspect. Another aspect can be that the DIY kit should not be too easy or too hard, because you still want them to be completed. Should be inspiring to finish. These are all things that during the workshops we have with the customer, they pop up. And ultimately you can group them into what can be the North Star and the inputs. And maybe at the beginning, you just do a draft North Star and then you iterate on it until it feels like you are capturing the fundamental thing. And the way it usually works is you start with the left side. For a DIY core, you can say, well, we believe that if we have more repeat makers, it means that our product promise is delivered. People buy our kits, they do them, they buy again, they have fun. They are the repeat makers. What drives the repeat makers? You have a set of inputs. And for this example, it's a matching success rate. It's a project completion rate. Are people able to assemble them or not? And the amount of community members. Let's say there is a belief that if we have a good community around it, then we are able to sell to that community the products we want. For your company, it will be something like that. It can be more difficult, more involved. I would say you can have multiple inputs, 6, 7. There can be some inputs, or some inputs can be related to each other. That happens as well. But then once you're at this stage, it's actually already a very good outcome of the workshop, because the people that are in the workshop, they get a shared understanding of what's the value formula. Then you can go one step deeper and think about what are the metrics behind. And for this North Star, the metric is how many DIYers do we have that completed more than 2 projects in the last 30 days. Here is an interesting part. If you start with the metric for a North Star or for the inputs, it's very likely that it will be a never-ending discussion and people will really hardly debate about things like, hey, why is it 2 projects and not 3? And why is it in the last 30 days and not 7 days? How does it work? What should be the right one? And in the North Star workshops that we are giving to our customers, very often they say, we just don't know. We don't know what is exactly the metric. But they do know that repeat makers feels like a good North Star. So how do you bridge that thing? One thing you can do is to just have a minimum viable metric. Because even if we don't know anything about the customer and we've never used product analytics before, we still can say that if the customer bought Y DIY package and actually managed to complete it in the last 30 days, looks like it's good. Maybe it's not perfect, but it reduces our uncertainty maybe by 50% or more. And over time, you become more and more certain. You build more muscles around it, and you can be very precise. And your analysts, data scientists can help define what are exactly the metrics and what correlates what, and is there a causality or not. And this is the moment when sometimes people say, are we just talking about the OKRs? We have the OKRs, it's all working. Why do we need a North Star? And the answer here is that those 2 things are complementary. Having OKRs is great. We say, well, you can have both. The thing about the OKRs is usually they are time-based. And usually OKRs are also related to a specific team. If you have a team on your product that works on the onboarding flow, and over time you realize that the onboarding is not good enough, you can set an OKR, an objective for the team. Let's improve the onboarding flow, and the key result can be that we expect it to be moved by 15% in this quarter. The thing is that it doesn't help the team an understanding of what are they contributing to, what are the key metrics that their organization finds important, and the North Star is doing that. So usually the setups that we see, and also the setup of Amplitude, is that we have a North Star, weekly learning users, we have a set of inputs for it, and then the teams that work on certain inputs, they get an OKR to shift certain metric in a certain quarter. So if the OKRs are time-based, the North Star is something that persists. That's a value formula, the connecting tissue that helps you to understand and communicate what is the medium and long-term sustainable, defensible strategy of your product. A couple of takeaways, and I'm going to leave you with this. A North Star is never the truth. It's a model, and a model is a hypothesis about reality. Over time, you might improve certain inputs, especially the metrics, to the North Star. They will be tuned many times. Your North Star might shift if the product strategy shifts. Uncertainty is a positive sign. when teams tell me, hey, we just don't know what works for our customers. We don't know exactly what the metrics should be. It's a great sign because building products is not easy. And over time, you get to know it. And if you would have known everything at the beginning, then probably you're in the commodity business, which is different. And the last thing here is measure to learn, not to control. So we don't recommend using the North Star in order to measure the employee performance. It's more of giving the team an understanding and giving a platform to kind of collectively learn about how the business works and aligning the organization. And then you can hire the OKRs in order to do the performance and the evaluation part. Lastly, if you want to define a North Star for your company, I recommend you registering at the Amplitude booth over there. There is a way to win a North Star workshop with our team. Or you can also read the playbook about the North Star. If you go to amplitude.com/Northstar, you can find similar information to what I told you today, but with probably a bit more examples and also the ways how you can organize such a workshop by yourself. That's it for today. Thank you, everyone. Let me know if there are any questions.
All right, great. Now I'm in the back. So we are going to take a few questions, but as Fedor said, we would really encourage you, right, to visit the booth and ask a little bit more about the North Star framework and just about Amplitude in general. So we'll go over a few questions and then essentially, yeah, just feel free to reach out to him or visit the booth to sign up and learn more. Okay, so question number 1. Would you say the North Star should drive your OKR definition?
Yeah, I think that's probably was submitted before the last slides, but definitely yes. So the OKR is a stable picture about how the company works. And sorry, the North Star is a stable picture and then OKR is tied to that. And over time, you might actually choose not to use OKRs, but just directly connect your product bets or product features, product initiatives to the North Star inputs. That works as well.
Can we give another round of applause for Fedor?